The old court astrologer had declared that the heir of the Marquis of Yang and was fated for disaster, destined not to live past 20. Struck by 7 arrows and left barely clinging to life. The young heir was miraculously saved. The astrologer further proclaimed that if he somehow survived this mortal calamity, he must repay his savior with his own body to settle the karmic debt and continue living. The heir's family, bearing jade pendants and lavish betrothal gifts, entered the modest residence of a 6th-rank official in the capital. My legitimate elder sister stepped forward before me, accepting the jade pendant and claiming the identity of the one who had saved his life. Father and mother, overjoyed, lavished praise on her and the heir, entirely forgetting that she had no knowledge of medicine. I stood behind the screen, tracing the scar on my face, refraining from revealing the truth. In my previous life, I had married Cedric as I wished. My elder sister, having falsely claimed credit, was scorned by the capital and expelled that very day. 2 months into my marriage, Cedric set fire to my room. Burning me alive, he had mercilessly killed me, the one who saved his life, only to avenge his beloved sister. Now, reborn, I would allow this couple to unite, letting them share the same bed in life and the same grave in death, without my interference. Cedric and Yolanda's engagement proceeded smoothly. After exchanging the betrothal documents, Cedric casually asked, "I hear there's a second young lady in your household?" Mother's smile immediately faded, lips curling disdainfully. "She's a wild girl, not fit for formal occasions. Rude. And liable to offend nobility." Father forced an awkward laugh. "Today is Yolanda's big day. Let's not mention outsiders." Not mention. Though I was Lynn's biological daughter. Father's words cast me as an outsider. Cedric's gaze shifted toward the screen. If we're truly one family, she should be introduced. Sensing tension, Yolanda hurried to the screen. "Eh? Why is the girl from the courtyard eavesdropping here?" Mother scolded. "Get down and receive your punishment." Yolanda glared at me fiercely, on guard, ready to prevent me from revealing the truth to Cedric. I lowered my head obediently and laughed. Yolanda stared at my retreating figure, surprised at how compliant I was. Before Yolanda claimed the jade pendant, Mother, unusually gentle, brought me food and drink, hoping to keep me in the room. In my previous life, I had not complied. Father and Mother had never shown me favor. Noticing something amiss, I had hidden behind the screen to eavesdrop. The Marquis of Yang and S household was a prominent family in the capital. Connecting with such a family was a lifelong dream my parents had never dared to entertain. Yolanda, at the perfect age for a marriage match, had already been seen favorably by Mother with a distinguished scholar. But when the Marquis's household came for her hand, they immediately pushed beautiful Yolanda forward without hesitation. Growing up, I remembered, my parents had always favored Yolanda. My temperament was unpleasant. I could not win their affection like Yolanda. The scar on my face made them avoid looking at me directly. Yet that scar had been left when I was 6. Saving Yolanda after she fell from a tree. Recalling the past was too painful. Without my obstruction, how far could Yolanda truly go? The morning after the engagement, the Marquis and his wife, accompanied by Cedric, arrived at the Lynn residence. I was summoned to the main hall. The Marquis sat sternly in the principal seat, Father, Mother, and Yolanda kneeling before him. Cedric stood beside Yolanda, visibly displeased. I shrank my shoulders timidly, ready to kneel, but the Marchioness stopped me. "You must be Lynn. This child pleases my eye already." "Mother, I will not marry her," Cedric declared firmly. "No matter what the astrologer says. I only recognize Yolanda as my lifesaver. I will only marry her." The Marquis slammed the table in anger. "Ungrateful boy. The astrologer personally said that Yolanda's destiny clashes with yours, while Lynn's destiny is intertwined with yours." Cedric bristled, unwilling to comply. "The astrologer even said I wouldn't ride past 20. Now that I'm alive, he changes his words? I see that his predictions are not to be trusted. Father, please believe me. Yolanda will be a good wife. Without her, I truly might die." Only then did I understand the situation. The Marquis and Marchioness had brought Yolanda's betrothal papers to the astrologers seeking blessings, only to learn her destiny was incompatible. Feeling deceived, the Marquis came early to the Lin household, extracted my birth chart from my parents, and sent someone to consult the astrologer. After interpreting the charts, I was brought to the hall. Cedric, refusing to give up, recounted every detail of how Yolanda had saved him, causing the Marquis to waver. Father, I could not be mistaken. I cannot miss the one I truly love just because of a birth chart. If you insist I marry Lynn, I will yield only to make her my secondary wife. The astrologer only said I must repay with my body. He never mentioned her rank. Being the heir's concubine does not dishonor her. The Marquis softened slightly, his face relaxing. Your Grace. Actually, Lynn is not my daughter by birth, Mother interjected. Years ago, my wife had complications in childbirth. The child was stillborn. I could not bear my wife's grief, so I adopted a child from outside and fabricated a birth record. No wonder the child had a birthmark and looked nothing like me. My poor biological daughter. My parents had used all their cunning in this deceit. I listened in numb silence as they denied my identity. Once a lie begins, continuing it is easy. They seamlessly painted me as a lazy, useless, having fulfilled my obsession. Wild girl, unfit to become the heir's wife. The jade pendant, though I gave one to each daughter Lynn's, was already broken. Even my token for Cedric was dismissed. Yolanda finally spoke up. I remember. The day we saved the heir. Lynn and Mother were at the temple praying for 3 days straight. She never left. Everyone rejected my identity, yet all knew in their hearts that I was Cedric's true savior. I knew my parents favored Yolanda, but I hadn't expected such shameless partiality. As for Cedric, perhaps he had wondered who truly saved him. Seeing both our faces, he decisively believed Yolanda, convincing himself she was his savior. Indeed, let out a low sigh. I had accompanied her to the temple, but she, thinking me too ugly and that I would offend the deities, locked me in the room. She knew I had left at night, yet deliberately claimed I was still there. Yolanda had no medical knowledge whatsoever. Cedric's injuries were severe. He needed stitching, and it was only because I dared to take the risk that I saved his life. He held my hand, promising to marry me, to cherish me for a lifetime. For someone like me, having fulfilled my obsession, whose ties of family affection were so thin, I was deeply moved. No one had ever said they would love me forever. Yet, he reneged. I clung stubbornly to the belief that once he knew the truth, he would love me. I never imagined that Cedric was not a good man. Fortunately, having fulfilled my obsession, I now had a second chance, and I would not make the same foolish mistakes again. Doesn't the Marquis want to ask me? I never claimed to have saved the heir. I lifted my head to meet his scrutinizing gaze. My hand is injured. Even holding a brush is a struggle. I raised my arm, rolled up my sleeve, and revealed my right hand wrapped in gauze. Cedric's expression brightened, and he gave me a knowing look, murmuring, "If only you had been this honest in your previous life." The Marquis' eyes flicked between Yolanda and me, taking in every detail. Yolanda's legs weakened, and she leaned against Cedric for support. I kept silent, letting the Marquis draw his own conclusions. Though experienced, he sensed something amiss. No matter how much he probed, I denied everything, while Yolanda grit her teeth and confessed, "Marquis, I already have someone I cherish. I once thought he was a poor hunter, and my parents would disapprove. Now that it's clear I am not the Lin family's heiress, at least there is an explanation." I bowed 3 times to my parents. "The Lin family thanks you for your care. Now that I know my true identity, I will not remain in the household." I turned to leave, but Cedric blocked my path. "You're lying. The one you love is me. There was no hunter. Lynn, I could take you as a concubine. Since you care for wealth and status, I'll indulge you." I slapped Cedric across the face. "Heir, how dare you fabricate such insults against my virtue? This is the first time I'd met you, so where is the affection?" I pressed out to tears, stomped my foot, and before anyone could react, I bolted. I fled the Lin household and hid in a corner of an alley. I tilted my head to the sky, silently sobbing. In my past life, I had caused a scene. Trusted by the Marquis yet completely denied by Cedric. Even when I recounted every detail to fill in what Cedric had omitted. Even if Yolanda stammered and tried to evade, Cedric only trusted her. My parents saw clearly that Cedric never liked me. They colluded with Yolanda, deceiving and manipulating. Just as now, they denied my identity as the Lynn heiress and deliberately injured my hand, intending to cast me out. This time, everything was under my control. I would show them that falsehoods could never become truth. Word of Cedric and Yolanda's marriage spread, sparking chatter among the capital citizens. Though Yolanda was the daughter of a government official, her father's rank was insignificant compared to the Marquis. Cedric was handsome, and countless noble women in the capital admired him, many with far better backgrounds than Yolanda's. Seizing the public's curiosity, I orchestrated a campaign glorifying Yolanda's rescue of the near-death Cedric. People loved gossip, and the tale grew more and more absurd, casting Yolanda as a miraculous healer rivaling Huatuo himself. Yolanda, vain and accustomed to praise, reveled in the attention, utterly intoxicated by it, truly believing herself a divine physician. Cedric sensed the problem. But by now, the entire capital from the royal family to commoners was abuzz. He could do nothing to stop it. Yolanda was summoned and daily to aristocratic banquets, where people came to gawk at the miracle doctor. Fearful of illness and death, everyone fawned over someone who could save the dead, seated in high esteem. A mere word from her could ruin or elevate a minor official's life. A smile could earn her lavish gifts. When I heard she had returned with the coral 3 stories high, I finally left the capital satisfied. Killing her outright would have been too cheap. To make her fall spectacularly, she first had to be exalted. A divine physician must not only hold the title but also possess the power to truly save lives. I did not leave the capital entirely. I found a nearby temple to stay temporarily, letting the city's turmoil unfold. Cedric and Yolanda's wedding was grand. From the mountains on the outskirts, I could hear the shrill notes of Suwane horns. Let them play. This was their last taste of wealth and prestige. On the night after their wedding, I encountered a severely injured man in the woods. Once before, I had met Cedric here, blood everywhere, arrows embedded in his body, clinging to life with his hand grasping mine, begging for help. This man's appearance surpassed even Cedric's. He too reached out, seeking rescue. I would not fall in the same trap twice and turned to leave, but after 10 steps, inexplicably, heading fulfilledly, my resolve softened. My master had taught me medicine and compassion, instilling in me the heart of a healer. He had pity on my unloved upbringing and had taken me in, making me promise to save lives. Cedric had been grievously wounded. Trouble. Yes, but I could not ignore this man. I hesitated, then returned. His injuries were worse than Cedric's. Perhaps my efforts would go unrewarded, but I could not stand by. I performed basic first aid, binding critical wounds to prevent fatal bleeding, dragging him to the same cave where I had treated Cedric. I even blindfolded him to spare his sight. Fortunately, the tools from before were still there. Without anesthesia, he cried out repeatedly as I cut and stitched, fainting between bouts of pain. By dawn, I had removed hidden weapons, cleaned the wounds, and stitched him up, utterly exhausted. If you weren't good-looking, I wouldn't have saved you. I pinched his cheek, attributing my compassion to his face. When I returned to the temple for food, the cave was empty. He had left and had taken all my tools with him. Thief. I'm always the bad one. I kicked the straw in fury, shouting my indignation. Fine. His departure proved he survived. At my feet, something caught my eye. Picking it up, I found a jade pendant of decent quality. No inscription. No clue to its origin. Last time, I had inadvertently left a jade piece behind. This time, I had accidentally picked one up. I kept it, considering it my treatment fee. For several days, I kept track of news in the capital, yet none of the good tidings I had anticipated arrived. Yolanda continued her ostentatious outings, and Cedric still showered her with indulgent affection. But I distinctly remembered that in my previous life, at this very moment, a noble in the capital had been gravely injured, just like Cedric, barely clinging to life. The imperial hospital was helpless. The old court astrologer had pointed to a single hope: the one who saved the heir was the key to survival. An imperial edict had summoned me to save him. Yet my hands had been injured by my parents, unable to hold a knife properly. When I suggested performing a risky operation, the imperial physician scolded me, calling it delusion. Because of that incident, the Marquis had abandoned any support for me. Convinced I was not the one who saved the heir, they had sought Yolanda. But she died in the fire on the second day of my marriage. Cedric had vented all his hatred on me, and the Marquis had ignored it, allowing me to burn alive. I had deliberately exaggerated Yolanda's medical skills, painstakingly building her reputation. All for this moment. Why, then, had no noble been injured? Why had no one exposed Yolanda's true identity? Could it be that events after rebirth were also subject to change depending on choices made? I refused to believe Yolanda's life could be so charmed. Impulsively entering the capital to investigate, I suddenly remembered the one I had saved. Could it be? By the time I came to my senses, I had already disguised myself and mingled into a princess's banquet, where Yolanda was one of the invited distinguished guests. Before I could reach the person I sought, I was dragged into a corner, my mouth covered before I could call out, "Lynn, it's me." The one pulling me away was Cedric himself. Had my scheme been discovered? Uneasy, I dared not lift my head. "Lynn, I've been searching for you. Where have you been these past 3 months?" His voice was gentle, the same I had only heard in that single month after our marriage, when he had deceived me, making me believe in his love, only to let me die in despair. I trembled, refusing his approach. "Lynn, have you been well?" No matter what Cedric said, I bit my lip and remained silent. After a brief moment, Yolanda hurried over. "There's little time. Did you convince her?" Seeing Yolanda after 3 months, she was not as pristine as I had expected. Bloodshot eyes betrayed restless nights. Her face was drawn, corners of her mouth downturned, sharpness etched into her expression, clearly strained. Her temper unsettled. "You've always adored me, haven't you? You even said we'd always lie together. So how about coming to the heir's residence?" Yolanda forced a smile, her attempt at closeness reluctant. I looked at Cedric in surprise. He nodded. "Though she may be a concubine, I will not mistreat her. I will treat both sisters equally." Hearing this, Yolanda's grip on my hand tightened. I deliberately cried out in pain. "Sister, you're hurting me. Sister. I know, Helen fulfilled land session. Lynn, I dare not covet the heir." Cedric frowned, pushing Yolanda aside, taking my hand to examine it carefully. "Didn't we agree to be magnanimous? Do you want to live or not?" Cedric whispered harshly to Yolanda. She gritted her teeth but suppressed her anger. "I'm magnanimous all I want. But she may not agree to help me. She's hated me all her life. Opposed me at every turn. Always vying for our parents' favor." I reminded softly. "Lynn, you just said I was the one you loved most." Yolanda's eyes glinted with murderous intent. Only Cedric's presence restrained her. "Lynn, I hear you know some medicine. My sister is now pregnant and cannot see patients. Can you assist her? Whatever you require, I can fulfill," I said. Stunned, I bit my lip fiercely, holding back the jubilation surging in my heart. I had thought Yolanda's act perfect, but it seemed she was already under suspicion, soon to crumble. No wonder she had only attended the princess's banquets these past 2 weeks. She had no choice. This was a trap aimed squarely at her. Calmly, having fulfilled my sigh, I said, "Lynn's medical skills are unparalleled. My humble abilities cannot measure up. I cannot help." By now, Cedric clearly knew that Yolanda was not a savior. Yet he still played the fool, willing to let me, the true lifesaver, serve as a stand-in, treating the stand-in as the principal. Besides, if Lynn cannot treat patients due to pregnancy, she can say so. Who would dare trouble the heir's concubine? Pregnancy does not render one helpless. They expected to use me, treating me as a fool. "Cedric, you've gone too far. If you insist on playing dumb, then I will play along. I have been foolish since childhood. Only half knowledgeable in medicine. Never saved anyone. How dare the heir let me take Lynn's place? I emphasized the word never. Cedric, mindful of his pride, flushed with shame at my words. Yolanda, thinking only of her own survival, spoke plainly. Stop pretending. There are no outsiders here. Even if you saved the heir. What of it? With your looks, becoming a concubine is already reaching too high. The heir loves only me. Not you. She proudly caressed her belly, flaunting the fleeting happiness of her pregnancy. I watched Cedric silently. He averted my gaze in return. Lynn, you'd better be sensible. I don't need you specifically. But when you have no value, your only path is death. Yolanda revealed her final card, threatening me outright. And why have you come to the princess's residence today? Heir. I see no need to persuade her. Let her die. I'll even sever my own right hand if necessary. Her cruelty was clear. Cedric, however, disagreed. Yolanda, go back first. I'll persuade her. Reluctantly, she obeyed as her maid urged her to leave quickly. Remember, heir. Don't be soft. Think of our child, your first son. Cedric looked at her gently, eyes flickering with uncertainty. Compared to his earlier indifference toward me, this tenderness was genuine. They lingered together briefly, entangled, before Yolanda left, head held high in triumph. Lynn, I owe you an apology. He lowered his head, his voice tinged with guilt. I know you've returned. I know you are the one. Yolanda is carrying my child. I can't ignore her. For your sake, she is your sister. Will you help her? I smiled silently. These two truly were a perfect pair. In unison, they sought to control the rest of my life. I thought of how, in my past life, he had stubbornly chosen Yolanda without care, crushing me utterly. Now, in this life, he was just as eager to make up for past regrets, shielding Yolanda close from the start. She's been married only a month. Yet the child in her womb is already over 2 months along. The heir's impatient affection is impressive. I noted. Cedric paled, unable to deny my words. Yet it was love that drove his haste to claim Yolanda. While Yolanda, fearing he might reconsider and wishing to secure her position as the heir's wife, had deliberately conceived early. I had discerned this nauseating truth from her pulse when she touched me. Lynn, I'll agree to anything. Even take you as a secondary wife. As long as you help Yolanda. Anything? Fine. You'll feel the burn of raging fire. And then I'll agree. I scoffed, letting the truth of my rebirth show through. My hatred was plainly visible. Cedric, cowardly, could not respond. The feast is ready. Your Highness. Please return. A lady in waiting from the princess's residence announced, breaking the standoff. Cedric's face flickered with alarm. He hadn't noticed her arrival but dared not act rashly. Lynn let out a low sigh. Don't act impulsively. Think carefully about what you truly want. He whispered, straightening his attire and following the lady in waiting. I lingered a moment, then trailed to the front courtyard to watch the spectacle. The princess's banquet was lavish, attended by many. I knew there was the daughter of the right prime minister, who bore a grudge against Yolanda. But I hadn't expected over a dozen other heiresses and noble women, all at odds with her, to be present. Tea and pastries were served, and the princess invited guests to sample them. Yolanda had just taken a bite when she overheard the princess addressing a lady. I was remiss. I just learned Lady Liu is with child. This millet cake is unsuitable. Replace it immediately. Yolanda promptly spat out her bite, caught fully in the princess's gaze. The princess frowned. Does the heir's wife find my pastry unpalatable? Truly. The heir spoils her, sparing her even the slightest lesson in propriety. It was a public rebuke of Yolanda's manners. Cedric's expression darkened. I merely chuckled. Yolanda, the daughter of a minor official, had never seen the world beyond her small bubble. All she cared about was protecting her child and securing wealth and status. In the past, with Cedric shielding her, she had never suffered real disgrace. But now, the princess was clearly targeting her. Cedric was too slow. Yolanda immediately started defending herself. I just remembered that I, too, am with child. These cakes are unsuitable. But I never thought the princess's pastries were bad. The right prime minister's daughter quickly retorted. Everyone says the heir's wife's medical skill is miraculous. Why only now? Prompted by the princess. Does she realize the cakes are unsuitable? Could her skill be fake? Yolanda opened her mouth to retort. But Cedric stopped her. Her eyes flicked to me. The onlooker. And a smile crept across her face. Who says my skill is fake? Does anyone dare challenge me? I guessed immediately rose. My husband works at the Imperial Hospital. I studied medicine under him for several years and know a little. I dare to learn from the heir's wife. Yolanda pointed at me. My sister studied alongside me for several years. She knows a little too. And can spar with you. All eyes turned to me. Yolanda stepped forward and took my hand. Sister. Play seriously. If you win, I'll grant you a wish. If you lose, having fulfilled my rivalry, we die together. She whispered into my ear. Then pushed me forward. The princess did not intervene. Announcing the start with keen interest. In Yolanda's memory, I had been the timid second miss. Always beaten and scolded. Lower in status than even her maid. She had never imagined and I would dare betray her. From childhood, I had carried out her orders faithfully, even taking blame in front of my parents, never refusing a task. The only defiance had been regarding Cedric. The imperial physician's wife posed a slightly difficult challenge. But I answered without hesitation. Her expression dark and with each reply. And she gradually ceased questioning. The others, unfamiliar with medicine, could not comprehend our contest. Seeing only my calm demeanor while the physician's wife fell silent. The princess asked Yolanda. Does the heir's wife approve of your sister's answer? Cedric frowned. Something amiss. Wishing to slow Yolanda's reply. But she nodded eagerly. Of course. A student of mine cannot fail. Madam. Please concede. The imperial physician's wife sighed. Shaking her head. Lynn's answers are all wrong. They show no sign of proper training. I nodded. I know nothing of medicine. What I said was indeed nonsense. I am not the second miss of the Lynn family. Bade clearly stated that I am the child he brought from the outskirts. I entered the princess's residence today in disguise. Hoping, amid the crowd, to perhaps find my biological parents. Yolanda could not believe it. Flustered, she jumped from her seat. Rushing toward me. Raising her hand to strike. Cedric blocked her. His face had dark and to its limits. He began to regret Yolanda was utterly unfit to be the heir's wife. He had assumed any exposure of her deceit would happen much later. Or in a minor setting, not here. Before the assembled noble families of the capital. Yolanda's blunders compounded with every word, every act. The shame no longer rested solely on her, it tarnished the entire Marquis household. The nobles, having fulfilled my say, sharp and discerning, had already realized Yolanda was a fraud. Those who had once showered the family with gifts now quietly resented their deceit, pondering how to retaliate. Cedric pressed Yolanda by her waist, forcing her back, fainting. With Cedric's prompt, Yolanda finally unleashed her most practiced trick. Oh? Fainted already? Imperial physician. Attend to her at once. The princess outranked the heir. And Cedric, caught off guard, could not refuse. The imperial physician placed a hand on her pulse. The heir's concubine is over 2 months pregnant. Her fetus is unstable. Now, with her key and fire in turmoil, she has fainted. The princess teased. Over 2 months. You say? Congratulations. Congratulations. Take her back to rest, Your Highness. When she awakens, let her consider the medical challenges the imperial physician posed, and how she might address them. Cedric gritted his teeth and departed with her. Before leaving, he lingered, his gaze on me shaded with unreadable meaning. Until someone reminded him and he finally turned away. The princess deliberately ignored me, continuing her tea drinking. The banquet proceeding as usual. I was led to a secluded wing. No matter how I pressed, the ladies in waiting remained silent. Pushing open a door, the room was thick with the scent of medicine. Lynn, On the bed sat a man, still carrying the scent of blood. I had no choice but to summon you this way. I stepped forward, eyes widening. It was the man I had saved a few days ago. His torso was bare, blood seeping through the bandages. A voice spoke from behind me. His Highness's wound had stabilized, but it reopened a few days ago. Please, young lady, having fulfilled my ansai, treat him. I turned to see the speaker was the head of the Imperial Hospital, the very physician who, in my previous life, had sent me to save the noble. I clenched my clothing. Such ill-fated coincidences. Yet here I was. I had hoped the royal household would summon Yolanda to treat the noble, expecting her failure to implicate the Marquis and perhaps even Cedric. Yet I had intercepted and saved him myself. The one I failed to save in my last life, I saved this time. Absurd. I did not know whom to resent, tears streaming down my face. The man, flustered, Hadusadade, tried to comfort me, but lifting his hand disturbed the wound, darkening the blood. I wiped my tears, stepped forward, removed the bandages, and examined the injury. Very well, save him. All the way. Let it be that fate conspired against me. But at least today Yolanda was exposed. Her end would be nothing good. Feeling slightly relieved, I asked the man, "Can the things you took from me be returned?" He nodded. The imperial physician placed a tray before me, hands cupped respectfully. Eyes eager to learn. I hesitated briefly, having fulfilled my ansai. Then let him observe my every move, answering his questions as I worked. The man I saved was Prince Raymond, the Emperor's most beloved son, the Empress's own. The Emperor had consulted a court astrologer with my birth data, seeking to see if a match with Raymond was favorable. Hearing this, my heart sank, cursing the old astrologer. Whether he was accurate or not, his pronouncements had ruined me. Raymond never disclosed exactly how the astrologer interpreted my fate, but he promised me a future of my own choosing, free to live it as I wished. Everything at the princess's residence today was arranged by me. The impostor claiming your identity will be punished accordingly. The day I met Raymond, his personal guards were present. During my treatment, they had been repeatedly astonished by my bold methods, nearly taking my life. Once Raymond regained consciousness, he was sent back to the palace with the best medicine. Initially, having fulfilled my obsession, he thought it was the legendary healer Yolanda who had saved him. From the guard's account, it was clear the Lin family's schemes could not deceive him, nor could Cedric's feigned ignorance. Raymond's wounds were initially improving, but a palace assassin's interference worsened them. Even if I had not come to the princess's residence, his men could have brought me to the capital. Knowing I would come, he had orchestrated the entire scene. Lin, this is my sincerity. I could see it in Raymond and I. Something deeper had begun to stir. Yet I was no longer willing to risk anything. Pretending ignorance, I treated his injuries and requested to leave. Rumors of the princess's residence spread with embellishment. By the time I heard them, they had become tales of Cedric and Yolanda secretly conspiring, Cedric feigning injury to unite with Yolanda, fabricating her legendary healer status. The innocent Marquis became an accomplice. The Marquis's reputation plummeted. I heard he had whipped Cedric 20 times, leaving him bedridden. Yolanda was no longer invited to any noble banquets. Sixth-rank official Bade was dismissed from the capital and sent to a remote post as a minor officer. On the day my parents left the capital, I escorted them personally, handing over 300 tiles of silver. Though I have not found my biological parents, I dare not neglect the upbringing you gave me. This silver is my repayment. I was now the second prince's household physician. My advanced medical skills required protection. Without it, my life would be at risk. With Raymond as my patron, I could freely study medicine and save those I could, not merely serve as a healer for the high and mighty. Raymond accompanied me to bid farewell. My parents, believing I was Raymond's woman, knelt, crying and pleading. Lin let out a low sigh. Our dear daughter. We were wrong. You are truly our own. They wailed, desperate to reverse the departure. You are flesh from my body. Denying you was out of necessity. I thought your sister's beauty could capture a man's heart. Once she secured her place in the Marquis household, we would enjoy prosperity together. I found you a suitable husband. Yes, having fulfilled l'intention. We never intended to abandon you. We didn't expect you to be so headstrong. When you left, we cried for days, searching for you. Search for me? I had never been seen on the streets. Never a trace. All my life. You were favored while I received hand-me-downs. I doubted I was truly your daughter until that day I heard it from your own mouth. I had nothing to do with you. The silver has been given. The debt of upbringing repaid. We shall never meet again. No matter their cries. I waved and watched the escort drag them away. Words spoken cannot be recalled. Such parents were unworthy of being mine. War had erupted again at the border. Rhyme and led the army, taking me along. The battlefield provided countless injured soldiers, ideal for practicing and refining my skills. Rules mattered little there. Survival was paramount. He persuaded me. Cedric was also in the army, commanding his own post. He hoped to leverage military merit to secure an imperial edict for a marriage between us. Yolanda's child had failed to be born safely. Temperamental, she could not endure ridicule. Once glorious, she would fall just as spectacularly. At a palace banquet, quarreling with others, she collided with a candlestick and, unable to be rescued in time, perished in the fire. After Yolanda's death, Cedric came to me, exhilarated. Lynn let out a low sigh. I am free. Yolanda is dead, burned in the fire. But this time, I won't take revenge on you. I will protect you. I ignored his frenzied words. On this journey to the border, I had hidden in the carriage, paying him no attention. Yet he persistently ran up to me, offering his self-styled, passionate confession. Doesn't that move you? I thought you liked him. Raymond asked, sorry. Like him? For what? Mistaking a worthless fish for a pearl? Or for heartlessly killing his lawful wife? I retorted. Cedric seemed to think I didn't know. Yolanda could have been saved. But Cedric had deliberately delayed, ensuring her death. Dog bites dog. And neither of them is a good man. Watching them turn on each other is rather entertaining. So much for love. The battlefield is cruel. Swords and blades show no mercy. Cedric was gravely wounded once again. He sent his guards to fetch me, begging for my aid. But I was busy tending to another severely injured soldier and missed them. By the time I realized and hurried over, the crucial window to save him had passed. I am no deity. I possess no power to bring the dead back to life. Cedric, knowing his time had come, actually left. The National Master was right. I won't live past 20. 2 lifetimes. And I never reached 20. So be it. He murmured. I understood his words. It was a pity I had died early in this life. I had no knowledge of how he had died in the past one. But I did not ask. In the end, he offered only the most useless apology before letting go of his last breath. I did not shed a single tear, instead turning immediately to the next wave of wounded. Here, there is no place for mourning spring or greeting autumn. My younger sister is as mild-mannered as a chrysanthemum's. He never buys for anything and values dignity above all. She married a wealthy local man thanks to her good looks. However, on the day of the wedding procession, the groom's side went back on their word and demanded to have the betrothed gift. After marriage, they even treated her like a maid. I stood up for her at every turn, arguing for what was right. And we didn't let them push us around. Yet she just looked calm and said I was obsessed with money, too calculating, and had lost my dignity. When her husband cheated, I helped her confront his mistress. But afterward, she chose to forgive him, saying it was normal for men to have flings. Later, the mistress got pregnant and the checkup revealed it was a son. The husband insisted on a divorce. I found a lawyer to help her sue for a share of the marital assets. Unexpectedly, the husband, in a drunken rage, tried to hit her with his car. To save her own life, she didn't hesitate to push me in front of the car to die. Afterward, just because he promised her 1 million yuan, she signed a letter of understanding on behalf of the family and told the media they're innocent. If my sister hadn't insisted on fighting for the assets, he wouldn't have gotten angry and acted foolishly. My sister always likes to stir up trouble and nitpick about everything. This incident was just an accident. How could they hurt someone for money? I don't believe it anyway. When I heard this news from my hospital bed, I was so enraged that I died with resentment. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day of her wedding. 1. My mom said if you agree to have the betrothal gift, I'll take you to my home today. Otherwise, you can come over on your own. A familiar voice shouted loudly from outside the door. It was Blake, my brother-in-law. I snapped back to my senses and looked around the hotel room, which was filled with a joyous atmosphere. I realized I had truly been reborn. In my previous life, the groom's family had agreed to give half the betrothal gift before we got the marriage certificate, and the other half after the wedding procession. At the time, none of us thought there was a problem. But who would have known they'd go back on their word about the betrothal gift on the day of the procession, relying on the fact that we already had the marriage certificate? And now, the same scene was playing out again. Sister. A familiar female voice called out to me. My sister Chloe, dressed in a bright red traditional wedding dress ekfayuhi, sat upright on the edge of the bed. At that moment, her eyes looked at me with expectation. I used to be so familiar with that look. After our parents passed away and the company went bankrupt, we'd relied on each other since we were teens. She was my biological sister, my only family member, and I took care of her without any regrets. In my previous life, just one look from her would make me charge forward without hesitation, determined to protect everything that was hers. But in the end, what I got in return was her betrayal when Blake drove toward her in a rage. She pushed me in front of the car to save her own life. Afterward, she even slandered me, leaving me to bear the infamy of being despised, even after death. The pain of being hit by the car, of my body being shattered, still lingered in my mind. I clenched my fists tightly this time. I wouldn't be so stupid anymore. Noticing I was distracted, she called me again, a hint of urgency in her tone. Sister. This? A cold laugh echoed in my heart. In the past, I'd argued fiercely for her, ensuring she married in glory and wouldn't be mocked for being pushed around by her in-laws before even entering their home. But behind my back, she told Blake's family that I was obsessed with money over a little betrothal gift and had lost my dignity. Yet I didn't take a single cent of that money. Since she was marrying into the wealthy Blake family, I was worried she'd be bullied by her in-laws. So I gave her all the money to keep as a safety net, and I even added a substantial amount of dowry on top of that. But she actually transferred half of the betrothal gift back to her in-laws, winning praise for being sensible and generous. Later, to protect their reputation, the Blake family slandered me everywhere, claiming I was greedy and calculating, and that I'd deliberately asked for an exorbitant betrothal gift to sell my sister. They said they'd only gone back on their word during the wedding procession because they couldn't stand my greed. Because of this, wherever I went during that time, people pointed fingers at me. Some even pointed directly at my nose and cursed me, saying I was inhuman for selling my own sister for a betrothal gift and that I'd come to a bad end. I asked Chloe to speak up and clear my name, but she just said calmly, "The innocent need no defense." She even said she would have married Blake no matter how much the betrothal gift was, and that it was me who'd insisted on quarreling with the Blake family, almost ruining her wedding. This time, I won't interfere. Let's see how you get yourself out of this mess. With that thought, I looked at her and pretended to be embarrassed, saying, "This is your wedding, you decide." By this time, the relatives and friends in the room were already whispering among themselves, "I've never seen anything like this. Who cuts the betrothal gift on the wedding day? It's so embarrassing. How weird. The groom's family is rich, why are they so stingy? It seems they don't treat her that well after all. The bride is so pitiful. If they dare to humiliate her like this now, she'll definitely have a hard time after marrying in. It's obvious they look down on her. They don't even care about her dignity. If this happened to me, I wouldn't go through with the wedding. It's such a humiliation." Among the people in the room were Chloe's classmates and close friends, all looking at her with complicated expressions. Hearing those remarks, Chloe's face had already turned alternately pale and green. She bit her lip and said nothing, only glancing at me from time to time. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was waiting for me to stand up for her and regain her dignity. But I just stayed silent, wearing an expression that said this has nothing to do with me. As time ticked by, her face grew more and more amid everyone's whispers. Finally, heading to Feltland, someone from outside grew impatient and shouted that the auspicious time was almost here if they missed it, they'd leave. The people around her also kept asking Chloe if she still wanted to go through with the wedding. At last, she made up her mind. Gritting her teeth, she said, "I agree." Then, when almost she added, "What I care about is you, Blake, not the money. More or less doesn't matter to me. I don't want to fight over it." I curled my lips into a smile. But a flash of resentment was clearly visible in her eyes. "Keep pretending, keep putting on that act. Let's see how long you can keep this up." 2. After marriage, Chloe seemed to be living a good life. Perhaps to dispel the rumors from the wedding procession day. Someone who rarely posted on moments, had been sharing updates every few days lately. One moment, she'd post about the bird's nest soup her mother-in-law made for her, writing, "As long as I know my mother-in-law cares about me, that's enough. She doesn't want me to work too hard." The next moment, she'd share photos of flowers her husband gave her, captioning it, "I don't like such wasteful things, thoughtfulness is all that matters." Or she'd post pictures of the garden at their villa, paired with some quiet, literary quotes. She was clearly trying to build an image of herself as mild-mannered as a chrysanthemum, and her moments received quite a few likes. But I knew the truth: the bird's nest soup was left over from what her mother-in-law made for herself. The flowers were ones her husband's mistress had rejected. And her easy life as a wealthy young mistress was about to come to an end. Sure enough, a month later, she sent me a message asking me to come visit her. When I arrived at the Blake family's villa, she was the only one at home. The lithe nanny who'd been there before was gone. She handed me a glass of water, sat down on the sofa, and after chatting casually for a few minutes, she looked like she had something to say but was holding back. Of course I knew what she wanted to talk about. In my previous life, I'd found it strange to see her pouring water herself. Usually, the nanny did all these things. And that day, I didn't see the nanny at all. So I'd asked casually, and only then did I find out the truth. Ever since she moved in, her mother-in-law had demanded that she take care of all household chores herself. For that month, she'd been learning housework from the nanny. When the nanny was around, she'd just watched and never actually done the work herself. But after the nanny left, she'd only done the chores for 2 days before complaining nonstop. She'd wanted her husband to hire someone new, but he'd refused, saying there was no need to waste money. He'd married her to take care of their daily lives, he said, and told her to quit her job and stay home. Back then, I flew into a rage on the spot when I heard that. I thought their whole family was treating my sister like a maid. After arguing with them, they finally reluctantly agreed to hire the previous aunt back. But as soon as I turned around, she told the Blake family that it was all my idea, and that she had actually wanted to focus on the family herself. And she even told me that I had been too rude to Blake's mother, that I had disrespected an elder and lost my dignity, and that I should apologize to her. To make amends, she even used the dowry I had given her to cover the aunt's monthly salary. She also said that because of this, her mother-in-law praised her for not vying for anything and being reasonable. She had a casual job and enjoyed the leisurely life of a wealthy young mistress. While Blake's mother made sarcastic remarks about me, calling me an outsider who was sowing discord in their family. Originally, their family had already disliked me because of the betrothal gift and wedding procession incidents. And now they treated me with even colder faces and spread bad things about me everywhere. But clearly, when she heard that the Blake family was willing to hire the aunt, she was even happier than I was. Now, even if she were to be a maid for the Blake family now, even if she were to work like an ox or horse for them, I wouldn't interfere. I lifted my hand to check my watch and smiled. I almost forgot I have plans with a friend later, so I have to leave first. Finally, she spoke softly, putting on a calm demeanor. "Sister, Blake said he wants me to quit my job and be a full-time housewife, and do all the housework at home. What do you think?" A cold laugh echoed in my heart. She had finally said it. "Chloe, you're married now. It's only right for them to ask you to take care of the family," I replied. She froze. not expecting me to agree. After all, before she got married, I had reminded her that even though she was marrying into a wealthy family, she should still maintain her independence and have a career of her own to have a solid foundation. Chloe looked confused. Sister. But you didn't say that before. I smiled faintly and answered. Before was before. And now is now. I've thought about it. They're a well-respected family here. If you go out to work and be in the public eye, people will definitely gossip about you. And that would make their family lose face. I deliberately emphasized the last two words. Sure enough, upon hearing the part about losing face, hesitation appeared in her eyes. She nodded unwillingly. Then I'll listen to them first. I can't let the Blake family lose their dignity. 3. But being a young mistress of the wealthy Blake family was far from easy. After she quit her job to become a full-time housewife, I went to see her a few times. The Blake family's 800-square-meter villa meant she had to do the work of 3 maids all by herself. Once upon a time, she had never lifted a finger to do any household chores. Before our family fell on hard times, we had a maid to take care of things. Later, it was me, having fulfilled Wyabsai, her older sister, who looked after her in every way. Whenever I wanted her to help out a little, she would only say calmly, Sister, if I do this rough work, my fingers will get calloused. It's so undignified. I even have a manicure appointment tomorrow. But now? Waking up earlier than a rooster and going to bed later than a dog was the norm for her. The chores at the Blake house were both numerous and demanding. And Blake's mother was even more strict. In this life, without me standing up for her, her life as a wealthy young mistress had turned into that of a wealthy family's maid. Yet she didn't dare to make any demands, for fear of ruining her image of being as mild-mannered as a chrysanthemum and not buying for anything. She could only swallow her grievances and work from dawn till dusk. The delicate makeup she put on in the morning was soaked off by sweat, and her eyes, once filled with indifference to everything, had lost their sparkle, now filled only with exhaustion. Once, Blake's mother warmly asked me to stay for dinner. From the kitchen, Chloe let out sudden screams from time to time, accompanied by various noises like the sound of plates shattering. When Blake's mother heard this in the living room, she frowned, looking clearly dissatisfied. When Chloe finally came out after cooking, she exuded an overwhelming sense of tiredness. Her carefully styled hair was messy, and her white dress was stained with several yellow oil spots. The back of her delicate hands was even red from being scalded by hot oil, and there were several band-aids on her fingers. As she walked past, a cloying smell of cooking oil wafted over faintly. When Blake's mother and Blake smelled it, they couldn't help but cover their noses, looking disgusted. Chloe, you smell terrible. Hurry up and change into something clean. This is so undignified, Blake's mother said. At these words, Chloe's expression froze instantly. By the time she changed her clothes and came back down, the Blake family had already started eating, with no intention of waiting for her. As soon as she sat down, Blake's mother began to find fault, complaining that the fish was too tough 1 minute, and that the dishes had no flavor the next. Chloe didn't dare to refute a single word. She just forced a smile and said she would improve next time. Throughout the meal, she was ordered around by Blake and his mother so much that she couldn't even eat in peace. Blake's mother asked for more rice. Blake asked for soup, and they even said they were in a good mood and told Chloe to go to the wine cellar to get a bottle of red wine. Her eyes kept looking at me, filled with an unprecedented sense of urgency. She hoped I would speak up for her, just like I used to. But I pretended not to see, chatting happily with Blake and his mother. After dinner, just as she was about to go wash the dishes, Blake's mother stopped her and told her to cut a fruit platter and bring it over. We sat comfortably, eating the fruit after our full meal. By the time she finished her work and came out, only a few slices of apple turned brown from oxidation were left on the plate. The calmness on her face shattered in an instant. It was obvious that her life with the Blake family was far from easy. Blake and his mother had never respected her from the start. Without me standing up for her, and with her insisting on putting on a show of dignity and indifference, she would just have to bear her hardships alone. 4. Since I stopped meddling in Chloe's mess, my life had become much smoother. I made plans to go shopping with my best friend Mia. As soon as we walked to the entrance of a luxury store, we heard a familiar female voice coming from inside. "Why won't my card work?" The salesgirl replied helplessly. "Ma'am, you've already tried several cards, and none of them have any credit left. Is there something wrong with your machine?" "My cards can't possibly not work." Mia gestured to me and said, "Wendy, isn't that your sister?" I looked closely and sure enough, it was her. When the salesgirl heard Chloe's words, she looked her up and down. "Ma'am, if you don't have money, please don't waste our precious time. We get too many poor phonies coming here to show off. If you can't afford it, turn right when you go out." She rolled her eyes and put the clothes away at once. Chloe's face turned red, but she forced herself to stay calm and looked at the salesgirl, pretending not to care. "It's just a few pieces of clothing, how could I not afford them? What kind of attitude is this?" The salesgirl snorted to her nose and glanced at Chloe sideways. "If you have money, then show it. What's the point of just talking? I hate phonies the most." She ignored Chloe and went straight to serve another customer. Chloe's face turned deathly pale, but she couldn't throw a fit. She clenched her fists unwillingly, and when she turned around, she saw us. A flash of embarrassment crossed her eyes. I gave Mia a look, and she understood immediately, saying, "I just remembered I have something to take care of. You two sisters can take your time shopping." We went to a CAF. She spoke in her usual calm tone, chatting about her recent life, and that's when I found out the truth. Blake had told her he needed money for business, so she'd even given him the remaining half of the betrothal gift. Ever since she'd started managing the Blake household, they only gave her just enough money for daily expenses each month, never a penny more. Blake's mother even demanded she keep a detailed account of every single purchase, down to a single green onion, on a daily basis. She'd been using the dowry I'd given her for her own expenses, and after buying all those luxury clothes and jewelry lately, that money was almost gone. As she said this, she glanced at me a few more times, and that familiar look of expectation flashed in her eyes. Of course I knew what she was thinking. In the past, she'd refused to go to job interviews, saying competing with others was undignified. It was me who'd arranged a light job for her. The salary wasn't high, but it was enough to cover her living expenses. But what did she do? She spent all that money on clothes, jewelry, and cosmetics, claiming she had to buy expensive things to live a dignified life. Her monthly salary of a few thousand yuan was far from enough to support her spending habits. A single handbag alone would eat up her entire month's income. Every time she'd pretend to casually mention she'd run out of money in front of me, I'd send her money without hesitation. But now, I wouldn't give her a single cent more. I took a sip of coffee and smiled. "If that's the case, and you'll have to be more thrifty with your household expenses from now on. You should stop buying so many clothes like the ones in that store earlier." She stared at me in disbelief. "How can I do that? I married into the prestigious Blake family. Only clothes from these brands are worthy of me now. Wearing them out is what's dignified." I barely held back an eye roll. She barely had a penny to her name left, yet she was still going on about dignity. This kind of fake dignity was just vanity. 5. After finishing our coffee, we hadn't walked far from the CAF when I suddenly spotted Blake in the lingerie store next door. He was accompanying a young, charming girl. The girl was holding different styles of lingerie and asking for his opinion in a coquettish, intimate tone. They chatted and laughed, looking as close as a couple in love. I glanced at Chloe beside me. Her face turned alternately green and pale, looking extremely ugly. "Isn't that my brother-in-law?" I asked. She said nothing, but a layer of mist welled up in her eyes. "Sister, do you think he's having an affair?" Oh, that can't be." I feigned surprise. "Brother-in-law would never do something so undignified. Right?" She bit her lip and looked at me, saying, "Sister." It was the same old trick. She was waiting for me to storm over and confront them. But I was already immune to this. I patted her shoulder, pretending not to care. "Chloe, having fulfilled my desire, don't overthink it. Maybe that's just a regular friend of his. In my previous life, she'd also told me Blake was cheating. I didn't hesitate to go with her to confront his mistress. In the end, Blake insisted the woman was just his adopted younger sister. So, to avoid making a bigger fuss and more importantly, to hold on to her position as a wealthy young mistress, she forgave Blake. And she'd blamed me, saying, "Sister, Blake has me in his heart." That was just a misunderstanding with her. "You're always stirring up trouble and embarrassing everyone, it's so undignified. In this life, I'd give her the dignity she so craved." She stared intently in Blake's direction, a flash of anger in her eyes. I knew she probably wanted to grab them by the collars and demand an explanation right then and there. But bound by her obsession with dignity, she could only stand there and watch the two lovebirds cozy up to each other. Not long after, Chloe called me again. "Sister, Blake brought his mistress home." When I arrived at the Blake family villa, Blake's mother, Bella, and that woman were already sitting on the sofa. The atmosphere didn't look good. When Chloe saw me come in, her eyes turned to me, filled with her usual expectation. Blake, rivalries, on the other hand, looked even more annoyed at the sight of me. "Luna is just my adopted younger sister. How many times do I have to explain this? What more do you want from me?" he snapped. "She works at the company as my secretary now. Living here is convenient because it's close to the office. I don't get why you're making such a big deal out of this." Chloe pressed her lips together, a hint of unwillingness in her eyes. But she forced a calm expression. "I'm not making a big deal out of it. She looked at me, waiting for me to speak up for her. Amid her expectation, I spoke up with a smile. "Since brother-in-law says she's his adoptive sister, Chloe, you shouldn't overthink it. It would be undignified. If word gets out about these wild guesses of yours, it won't be good for your reputation. Or for the Blake families." Chloe froze, her lips trembling. But, before she could finish, Blake's mother looked at me approvingly. "Wendy is so sensible. It's such a small matter. Chloe, you're being unreasonable. You even had to call your sister over for this." Blake chimed in. "Mom's right. I think you just don't have enough housework to keep you busy. You're bored, making a mountain out of a molehill all day long. You should learn from your sister how to be reasonable." Luna smiled, her eyes crinkling. "Sister is so generous, not at all petty like you. Chloe, stop overthinking it. Blake is just my good brother." As she spoke, she glanced at Blake, but the look in her eyes was clearly filled with lingering affection. Chloe's face turned even uglier. In the past, it was always her being praised for not vying for anything and being as mild as a chrysanthemum, while I, in contrast, was painted as the petty, unreasonable one. Now, the tables had turned. She bit her lip, forcing the last of her calm demeanor. "Since you're siblings, then you can stay here." When she walked me to the door, Chloe suddenly asked, "Sister, why didn't you stand up for me at all?" A cold laugh echoed in my heart, but I put on a confused expression. "Chloe, hadn't fulfilled my sorry. I really think they're just siblings. There's nothing else going on. You're overthinking it." She bit her lip and said nothing. But I knew she must have been doubting their relationship in her heart. She just had no proof, so she could do nothing but let it go. 6. Recently, the Blake family had closed a big business deal and was holding an internal celebration banquet. They'd invited me to attend to. The banquet was crowded that night. Even Luna was there. She wore a wine-red strapless long dress that accentuated her curvy figure perfectly. A dazzling diamond and necklace hung around her fair neck, paired with matching earrings, making her stand out brilliantly. By her side was Blake, dressed in a suit, with a red tie that seemed to match her dress at a glance. They were chatting and laughing with the company's senior executives. Chloe was also standing beside them, wearing a white dress, with her usual calm smile on her face. But she just held a wine glass in her hand, unable to get a word in edgewise. Blake finished his glass of wine in one gulp, then handed the empty glass to Chloe casually, ordering, "Get me another one." Luna cooed, "I want one too. Could you get some for all of us, please?" She smiled, but there was a hint of provocative contempt in her eyes. One of the senior executives said, "Isn't that a bit inconvenient? It's too much trouble for Mrs. Blake." Before Chloe could speak, Blake waved it off. "She's used to doing rough work at home. It's no trouble. Hurry up. Luna also chimed in with a smile. Blake is right. She's just a housewife, she doesn't understand our work anyway. Finding something for her to do is a good way to pass the time. Several executives laughed meaningfully. Chloe's face turned pale. Earlier that day, she'd even told me she wanted to dress up nicely and elegantly, so she could look dignified in front of those colleagues and executives. But now, the person closest to her and the person she hated the most had torn off her mask, humiliating her in front of everyone. The calm composure in her eyes crumbled. But bound by her obsession with dignity, she had no choice but to obediently go get their wine. After handing it over, she couldn't stand being there any longer. She made an excuse to leave with me. We sat on a sofa in the corner, making small talk now and then. Most of the tea the two were being intimate with each other. Luna would occasionally brush her hand gently over his arm. Sometimes, they would lean close to whisper, their eyes filled with ambiguity, chatting and laughing all the while. Chloe, petting so and sigh, on the other hand, was so furious that her anger seemed ready to burst forth. I took a sip of champagne and watched this amusing scene with great interest. This went on until a few female colleagues in front started chatting among themselves. Did you see that? The diamond on Luna's neck is absolutely dazzling. I heard it was a gift from President Blake. I think Luna is President Blake's foster sister. No wonder he's so generous to her. Foster sister? Don't be naive. They've been lovers for ages, they've long been involved with each other. Last time, he even gave her a couple's watch worth 6 figures. What? Doesn't President Blake have a wife? How could they get together like this? So what if he has a wife? Plenty of men fool around outside. I heard his wife is just a haggard old woman. She probably seduced President Blake to climb the social ladder. They're being so blatant, don't they have any respect for Mrs. Blake? Anyone who doesn't know them would think they're the couple. President Blake and Luna have always been ambiguous at the company. I even heard someone saw them. You know, in the office. The female colleagues were standing in front of a large pillar. Blocked by the pillar, they didn't notice Chloe, who was hiding in the corner behind them. At that moment, Chloe's face was as dark as storm clouds, and her fingers wrapped around the wine glass tight, and little by little. I was just about to speak up and pretend to comfort her when she suddenly stood up, glanced around anxiously, and asked, "Where did Blake and Luna go?" I looked up and sure enough, the two of them had disappeared from the hall. 7 It seemed she thought of something, for the anxiety between her brows grew heavier by the second. She grabbed my hand and said, "Sister, come with me to find them." That day, an entire villa had been booked for the celebration. Chloe pulled me along, searching from the bathroom to the utility room, and from the first floor to the second, yet there was no sign of Blake and Luna anywhere. We didn't stop until we reached the room at the end of the 3rd floor. The door was locked from the inside. Chloe tried to open it, but couldn't. From inside the room, soft, breathy moans could be heard from time to time, and the voice sounded somewhat familiar. She banged on the door repeatedly, then turned to me anxiously. "Sister, hurry and help me open the door." I shrugged. How would I know how to pick a lock? "Sister, I think you'd better not disturb their good time." She bit her lip, her face burning with anger. "It's not just someone in there, it must be that dirty couple." While slamming hard on the door, she called out Blake's name. After a few minutes, the door finally opened. The person who opened it was shirtless, wrapped only in a bath towel, with faint red lip prints still lingering on his lips. It was Blake. Chloe pushed him aside roughly and stormed into the room. Luna was leaning weakly against the head of the bed, covered only by a quilt. The hickeys left on her exposed neck were clearly visible signs of their intimacy. Clothes were scattered all over the floor of the room, creating an extremely ambiguous atmosphere. Luna didn't look flustered at all. She flipped a lock of her hair in a provocative manner and said, "Oh, you've picked such a bad time to show up." Tears instantly welled up in Chloe's eyes. Her face twisted with rage as she grabbed a pillow and threw it at Luna. "You shameless woman. How dare you seduce my husband? I'll beat you to death. You slut." Blake rushed over and stopped Chloe. "What do you think you're doing?" Chloe stared at him in anger. "What do I think I'm doing? You cheated on me behind my back and beating up this homerfecker." Everyone in the company knows about your dirty business. Where does that leave my dignity? You gave her diamonds and watches. But all I got was a lousy bouquet of flowers. I'm the rightful young mistress of the Blake family." Blake frowned, his expression turning unpleasant. "It's just a man's casual fling. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? Look at yourself right now, you're acting like a shrew. Where's the grace of the Blake family's young mistress?" Chloe was left speechless. She turned to me and said, "Sister, you be the judge here. In my past life, I had urged her repeatedly to get a divorce. A man either cheats 0 times or countless times. Back then, Blake, fearing she would divorce him, had promised her over and over again that it was just a casual fling and that he would never do it again. But Chloe, clinging to her status as the Blake family's young mistress, had finally forgiven him. She had even told the Blake family about how I had insisted she get a divorce. With a nonchalant tone, she had said, "I've always thought it's normal for men to have casual flings. As long as he comes home. That's enough dignity for me." It was my sister who kept pushing me to divorce him. After that, the Blake family had hated me even more with a passion. Now, I laughed it off and said, "Since my brother-in-law has said that, you'd better not make a fuss about it. I'm sure he still has you in his heart. As long as he comes home to you. Isn't that the greatest dignity you could ask for?" Chloe was stunned. She couldn't understand why I wasn't taking her side anymore. Blake's expressions softened. "Your sister is right. Stop being jealous over nothing. If you still want to be the young mistress of the Blake family, go home and wait for me. If this gets any bigger, no one will save face. Do you really want a divorce?" When she heard him mention divorce, Chloe bit her lip. After hesitating for a moment, she finally left unwillingly. I heard that night, Blake and Luna didn't come back until 2 or 3 in the morning. As for what they had been up to, no one knew. Not long after this incident, Chloe suddenly asked me out to go shopping for clothes. She even insisted on going to luxury stores to choose. I found this strange. The Blake family had cut off her funds, and she had no money of her own, so how dare she spend so recklessly? I asked, and only then did I find out it was for her birthday party. The Blake family had said this was her zodiac year. And after consulting a fortune alert, they decided to hold a grand celebration. She ran her pink manicured nails casually over those exquisite dresses and said, "I told them a simple celebration would be fine, I don't like anything too grand anyway." But Blake refused. He insisted on throwing me a big party to make me happy. No matter how many flings he has outside, he still loves me the most in his heart. My mother-in-law even told me to pick out some elegant dresses so I can wow everyone at the party. But I've never been one to seek the spotlight. Their being so kind to me have no choice but to agree. There was a hint of proud showing off in her calm tone. She turned to the saleswoman standing beside her and said, "Bring me your most expensive dresses to try on." Her birthday? A fortune alert? Memories from my past life came flooding back. I curled my lips into a smile and said, "Sister, they're treating you so well. You really are living a dignified life." When she heard my praise, she still kept a calm expression, but the corners of her lips curved slightly, and a look of pride flashed in her eyes. "My dear sister, enjoy this vain dignity while you can. Soon, let out a low sigh. You'll lose everything." On the day of Chloe's birthday party, it was indeed held on a grand scale. It took place in a 5-star hotel, with the venue decorated in a magnificent and exquisite style. Over 100 guests showed up, most of whom were Chloe's friends, classmates, and even acquaintances she barely knew. She had invited all of them. She claimed it was just to let everyone come and have a good time, but in reality, she wanted to show off how dignified and happy her life was in front of everyone. The spotlight shone on her, making her look especially luxurious and beautiful that day. She wore a well-fitted, high-end red dress that accentuated her graceful figure, and her delicate face wore the calm, elegant smile she was always known for. All the guests present let out sounds of admiration. At that moment, she seemed like the happiest and most dignified woman in the world. I held a glass of champagne and walked over to Blake. Gazing at Chloe on the stage, I sighed and said, "Sister is so happy. Even though today isn't her real birthday. You've still put so much thought into this. Brother-in-law. When he heard this, his face turned pale with shock. What did you say? Today isn't her birthday? I feigned surprise and said. You didn't know? Her real birthday is the day after tomorrow. The birthday on her ID was a mistake made back then. All these years. Everyone just went along with it. Is that true? He gripped his wine glass tightly, his face growing increasingly grim. Of course it is. You can go ask Chloe yourself if you don't believe me. With an ugly expression, he turned his gaze to Chloe on the stage. I am he though. Her gaze was fixed on Blake and Luna, who were not far away. At that moment, Blake's mother had just walked onto the stage, ready to give her a gift. She opened the exquisite brocade box in her hand, revealing a translucent, high-quality jade boudin necklace, its jade pendant larger than a pigeon's egg. Gasps of admiration erupted from the guests present. Chloe is so lucky. She married a rich husband. And her mother-in-law treats her so well. That necklace must be worth at least 8 figures. It's stunning. She really married well. Her in-laws make sure she lies so dignifiedly. Hearing the whispers from the audience, Chloe could no longer hide the smile in her eyes. She held her head high, like a queen being crowned, waiting for Blake's mother to put the necklace on her. But just then, Blake rushed onto the stage and whispered a few words in his mother's ear. Blake's mother's expression changed instantly. She quickly put the necklace back into the box and announced to the audience. We have an emergency. We need to leave now. Confused and anxious, Chloe grabbed her arm and asked, Mom, you haven't given me the necklace yet. At this, Blake's mother let out a cold laugh, looked Chloe up and down, and snapped. Do you even deserve it? The only reason I was going to give this to you was because Master Yin Zongshi said jade brings prosperity to the Blake family. Otherwise, I'd never give you something so valuable for free. She spat out the words with disdain. You poor nobody, you tricked my son into marrying you. How shameless can you be? An uproar broke out among the guests, and everyone wore expressions of eager anticipation, like they were watching a juicy drama. Chloe stared in confusion, completely bewildered. Mom, what are you talking about? Blake and I love each other sincerely. She turned to Blake, pleading. Honey, say something. But he just frowned and stayed silent. His silence seemed to confirm his mother's words. Love? Bullshit. I'm the one he truly loves. A shrill female voice rang out from the audience. 9. The person who spoke was none other than Luna. She walked onto the stage, caressed her belly, and whispered a few words to Blake and his mother. Soon, let out a low sigh. Delight spread across their faces. I had someone check. Luna announced proudly. This baby is a boy. And he'll bring prosperity to our family. Blake's mother was overjoyed. She stared at Luna's belly and kept repeating. Wonderful. Wonderful. I always knew you were the capable one. Luna. Chloe stared at them in disbelief. Today's my birthday. Why is she here? A cold laugh echoed in my heart. Of course I'm the one who told her to come. To set up this scene tonight. I'd anonymously pretended to be one of Chloe's college classmates who disliked her, telling Luna that if she wanted to officially marry into the Blake family and take Chloe's place, tonight was her chance. I knew by now that Luna was already pregnant with Blake's child. She'd never let her baby be born out of wedlock, and she was desperate to become the legitimate Mrs. Blake. Besides, she hated Chloe. Even if she'd suspected the message might be a hoax, she would have come to take the risk. Chloe's lips trembled as she pointed at them, demanding, how many times have you two snuck around behind my back? Know how long has this been going on? You even have a child together. Blake's mother rolled her eyes at her, sneering. I never liked you in the first place. Luna is sweet-talking and treats me well. Unlike you, always putting on that fake, holier-than-thou deadpan face. What are you pretending to be? Chloe's face turned deathly pale. All trace of her earlier calm was gone. As if clinging to the last shred of her dignity, she turned to Blake and said, Blake, let down a low sigh. When you married me, you said you loved me and would give me a dignified life. Have you forgotten that? Blake looked at her with disdain, put his arm around Luna, and sneered. I got tired of you a long time ago. In bed, you're like a dead fish, no passion at all. You're nothing compared to Luna. He spat out the cruel truth. At first, I only played along with you because you're good looking and have a nice body, and because you're as stupid as a doormat. Easy to control. Don't act like you didn't seduce me first. He added. If Mom hadn't said your birth chart would bring good fortune to our family. Do you really think you could marry into the Blake family? Stop daydreaming. It was true the Blake family was obsessed with feng shui and fortune telling. The only reason Chloe had married into their family was because Blake's mother had consulted a Fort Unchallert, who'd claimed Chloe's birth chart would bring luck to her husband and the family. In my previous life, the Blake family had accidentally found out that Chloe's actual birthday didn't match the one on her ID card. By then, Luna had just gotten pregnant, and that was why the Blake family had insisted on a divorce. At the time, I thought it was absurd. Never did I expect this detail to come in handy now. When the guests heard Blake's words, they looked even more amused. Some had even pulled out their phones to record the scene. Luna then added the final blow. Let me tell you the truth, Blake has always loved me. The betrayal gift you gave him? He used it to buy me a house. She laughed mockingly. Honestly, heading fullstå wag sasher. You're such a fool. You pretend to be noble. But you let someone trick you out of your betrothal gift. You're so easy to manipulate. Murmurs of discussion erupted among the guests. So she was just a tool all along. How pitiful. I think she had ulterior motives too. I always thought she was fake when I knew her before. Back in college, I thought she was so pretentious, acting like she was better than everyone else. So she seduced him first? No wonder he'd rather give his money to someone else than his own wife. That she was the one who stole him and forced him to marry her. She acts all calm and indifferent on the surface. But she loves showing off. Otherwise, why would she invite us friends she barely talks to? Exactly. She just wanted us to see how well she's doing. Too bad it backfired, haha. Every sarcastic word felt like a needle piercing Chloe's heart. At what she thought would be her happiest, most dignified moment. She'd fallen from heaven to hell. Mocked by everyone. The color rained from her face bit by bit, leaving only hatred in her eyes. Blake's mother looked at her with disgust and said, You seduced and tricked my son first. He slept with you for so long. And you haven't even given him a child. Who knows if you're even fertile? She declared loudly. Since everyone's here, let's make it clear today, our family doesn't want a woman like you. Blake also snorted coldly. You're useless. Luna. Let's go. Finally, heading to Felway, something in Chloe's eyes seemed to shatter. She let out a scream, rushed toward Blake, and began hitting and scratching him wildly. You bastard. You ruined my life. I'll never let you get away with this. Blake flew into a rage. He backhanded her several times, knocking her carefully styled hair into disarray. You damn bitch. How dare you hit me? You must have a death wish. When Blake's mother saw what was happening, she also rushed over to help. She grabbed Chloe's hair with one hand and tore her dress to shreds with the other, yelling insults all the while. How dare you hit my son? You slut. I'll kill you today. Chloe was no match for two people. The mother-son pair from the Blake family beat her until she could no longer fight back. This dramatic scene was captured by onlookers, who quickly posted the footage to major social media platforms. In the end, Chloe lay on the ground covered in injuries. A complete mess. Her makeup was smudged. Her face was black and blue. And her dress was barely enough to cover her modesty. As she watched the Blake family walk away, her eyes were filled with hatred. Once the onlookers had left after enjoying the spectacle, I walked over to her, squatted down, and pulled out a tissue to offer her. Feigning concern, I said, Sister, are you okay? Why didn't you come help me just now? Her voice was hoarse, tears welling in her eyes. But she didn't take the tissue. I pretended to be shocked. Sister, you started a fight in public that's so undignified. How could I help you? A flash of resentment crossed her gaze. I stood up, looking down at her from above, and said, Sister, all over the internet are videos of you being abandoned, and just now. You look so undignified right now and disappointed you've become like this. I shook my head, stared at her broken, vacant eyes, and turned to leave. I hadn't taken more than a few steps when the hotel manager, holding a bill, ran over to her anxiously. Chloe, having fulfilled my obsai. The Blake said you'll be covering the bill. Could you please settle the remaining balance? It's 308.0 in total. Get lost. A hoarse scream came from behind me. Oh, so this is the last straw that breaks the camel's back. 10. The Blake family wanted a divorce from Chloe. She agreed, but she dropped her pretense of being uncompetitive and dignified. She demanded half of the Blake family's assets. Otherwise, she refused to negotiate. Naturally, the Blake family rejected this. The two sides ended up in court, making a huge scandal that spread throughout the city. When I saw Chloe again, she had asked me out for tea. She had grown much thinner and haggard, wearing cheap clothes, and her nails were no longer done. Sister, lend me some money. I've sold all my valuable things. I need to fight the Blakes in court. If I win, I'll have money again, and I can live a dignified life. By the end of her words, a look of longing had appeared in her eyes. Even in such a sorry state, she still clung to the delusion of a dignified life. I took a sip of tea and said calmly, Sister, let it go. It's better to avoid trouble. This matter of yours has become a huge spectacle. It's so undignified. And people are laughing at you. Her eyes widened, and she looked at me with resentment. Why won't you help me? You weren't like this before. You always helped me in the past. If you'd helped me, how could I have ended up like this? I couldn't hold back a cold laugh. So she had known all along that I was actually helping her. Yet every time, she had taken it for granted, and even stabbed me in the back, shifting the blame onto me at every turn. In the past, I had endured and helped her repeatedly because I valued our sisterhood. But it turned out I was just a fool, being used as a pawn. Some people have cold, selfish hearts. No amount of warmth can melt them. Why should I waste my efforts trying to be a good person? I stood up and looked at her coldly. You've always prided yourself on being dignified and uncompetitive. I'm just giving you what you wanted. I think you should hold back. Don't make things undignified for everyone. You know the Blakes are good people. Be careful they don't take revenge on you. By the end of my words, hesitation finally appeared in her eyes. Before she could respond, I turned and left. A few days later, she sent me a message saying she had come to her senses and decided to stop pestering the Blake family. She wanted to go to another city to clear her head and asked me to drive her to the station. I agreed willingly. I parked the car at the entrance of her residential complex. She grabbed her suitcase, said she couldn't carry it, and asked me to help put it in the trunk. As I got out of the car, a black car drove up from behind, speeding straight toward us. I recognized that license plate all too well. It was Blake's car. 11. Chloe glanced in the direction of the car, her expression turning fierce. Sister, help me one last time. I'll never need you again after this. With that, she reached out and shoved me hard toward the road. I dodged sideways, and she missed, losing her balance and falling into the middle of the street. Her eyes were filled with confusion and terror. Before she could get up, Blake's car came speeding over. It hit her, sending her flying more than 10 meters away, then drove off without stopping. I froze for a moment. The memory of being hit and thrown in my past life flashed clearly before my eyes, but this time, I had escaped. I ran over to her. She was covered in blood. A horrific sight. When she saw me, she mustered all her strength to grab my hand. You didn't help me this time. You've been reborn too. Too? I was shocked. Her words were not a question, but a statement. The confusion and terror in her eyes were gone, replaced by overwhelming hatred. Could it be that after being hit by the car, she like me had been reborn? This time, Chloe was left paralyzed half-body. She could only lie in bed, unable to move, and needed someone to take care of even her most basic needs, including using the bathroom. And since she and Blake hadn't officially divorced yet, he was still her legal guardian. But the Blake family ignored her entirely. Although they had no choice but to hire a caregiver, the caregiver treated her horribly under the Blake's orders. As a result, Chloe always smelled terrible, and everyone who visited her was disgusted by it. I went to see her once. When she saw me, she grew agitated, but she could only mumble incoherently for a long time. unable to form a complete sentence. I peeled an apple slowly and told her about Blake. I told the police they're innocent. If you hadn't insisted on fighting for their assets, he wouldn't have lost his temper and made a mistake. I believe this was just an accident. How could they hurt someone for money? I don't believe it for a second. If you hadn't deliberately provoked him, brother-in-law wouldn't have come looking for you just like how you set it up in your past life. Isn't that right, my dear sister? I took a bite of the apple. It was indeed sweet. By the end of my words, her eyes widened in shock, and her already pale face turned even paler. In my past life, I had thought Blake's hit-and-run was an accident until she had come to my hospital room, pretending to be kind, and told me she had signed the family's letter of understanding. That anger had killed me. Before my soul dissipated, I heard her whisper to me. And only then did I learn that Blake's hit-and-run had been her scheme. She had long known she would lose the lawsuit. To get money and take revenge on Blake, she had deliberately called to provoke him. Moreover, the Blake family's business had suffered greatly because of the divorce scandal. That day, she knew Blake had been drinking and would easily lose his temper, so she provoked him even more, luring him to come confront her. And she had long planned to use me as a scapegoat. I savored her horrified expression, feeling a great sense of satisfaction in my heart. I checked my watch. It was almost time to leave. I stood up, furrowed my brow slightly, and gently covered my nose. Sister, why do you smell so bad? Did you eat too? Aunt Lee. My sister wet the bed. Come here. I called out loudly to the outside. Chloe's face turned bright red instantly, and her body began to tremble. In this life, you can enjoy your dignified life rotting and stinking, I whispered to her, then walked out of the ward without looking back. I didn't hear Aunt Lee's complaining shouts anymore until I was far away. I stood at the hospital entrance and took a deep breath of fresh air. From now on, everything is a new beginning. The end.